Obviously, from my standpoint and from the team standpoint, we've had a tough summer, period. In this league, you don't have an opportunity at times for do-overs. And when you get a chance to win, as we have had in the past, 2006, 11, and 12, when you get a chance to win, you got to win. And when you get an opportunity this summer to do something that you could have done and you didn't do it, you didn't do it. And so 1995 or 96, I was put in charge of basketball operations. And I've always taken the approach that there were about 5 things that I really valued. And they're not my words, they're somebody else's words, because get educated by other people, but is to, be impeccable with your word, to never take anything personal. Don't make any assumptions, always do your best. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. And this summer, at least 3 of those things didn't come to fruition. So what happened with Dwayne floored me. And I'm going to miss the fact of what I might have had planned for him and his future and how I saw the end and my thought process and how I could see his end here with the Heat. You are what you think and you are your thoughts, and it's my responsibility to sort of make that happen. I didn't make it happen. And Dwayne left. And so the buck really stops here. I'm not trying to fall on the sword for anybody. I have great regret that I didn't put myself in the middle of it and immerse myself totally in the middle of it. Get in a canoe and paddle to the Mediterranean if I had to. Be in New York when he arrived on the 6th and greet him at the airport. I didn't do that. I wasn't there in the middle of that negotiation, and that's my job. And so it's not going to be the same without him. But we will, forge ahead. I've been here when Zoe left, been here when Shaq left, been here when LJ left. Brian Grant, Eddie Jones, but Dwayne is unique. And as I think Mike and our marketing department, have done such a great job, there'll always be a key under the mat. I just hope it doesn't get too rusty, that's all, from that standpoint, and I'm going to miss him. But anyways, I'll open it up to questions because I know that you've had a lot of things that you've been kicking around, so I'm free to answer anything.
Pat, can you fill us in a little on where the situation with Chris Bosh stands, and if he does not have another or did not have another recurrence with blood clots, will he be returning? Today, on July 16th, what would you say the percentages are of Chris Bosh being a member of the Heat's active roster in 16-17?
It's always fluid, and it has been since there was a diagnosis and a decision for him not to play for the rest of the season. What the standard of care is in that situation is what drove us to make that decision. It's a positive environment right now with Chris, and I think his doctors, our doctors are constantly are more so now than ever communicating. I know what Chris wants, and I know he wants to play, and obviously we would be open to that. But this is still a very fluid situation. There's no on this day today, You said it's today the 15th or the 16th? Already? Okay, this is the 16th. There's not an answer, Ira. I wish I could give you one. And so let's just let this process, move on down the road, and then we'll go from there.
Pat, when you talk about regret and how if you had been in New York, if you had taken the canoe to the Mediterranean, whatever the opportunity was, why didn't that happen? And did you almost get urged in some ways by Dwayne's side to stay away and kind of let things play out the way they did?
We've always operated on the premise of a single voice, not mine, but Mickey, myself, Nick, Andy, Eric, Eric Woolworth, Mike McCullough. I mean, one single voice. I mean, there's two entities here. When it comes to basketball operations, we've always talked about the one voice, which is a philosophy and a plan, and moving on down the line that we all that's what we are and that's what we believe in. And so there was one voice in this negotiation. There are some times that Andy, handles an agent and a player, and Andy complete the deal. There are times that I've done most of them, and complete the deal. There are times when you have a long-standing relationship with a player, like Dwayne or Udonis, or even at the time I remember with Alonzo, that sometimes the owner gets involved in it. But we all speak with one voice. We all know what we want to do and what we want to accomplish. And so, the thing that happens during the course of negotiations, over the course of 7 or 8 days, has to do a lot with your thought process as to what the conditions were prior to that. And the conditions prior to that over the last year or two have always sort of pointed in the direction that, we as an organization didn't do enough, for Dwayne. And I've always been one who was always reaching to get him another guy, especially after LJ left, and trying to find a way to get him another guy to help him not only win, but to help him win in a way that he would be very proud when he moved on out and retired. And so it wasn't just getting another guy for him, it was to maximize our ability to win. And the only way we can do that is to have cooperation, is to the same kind of collaborative cooperation they had in 2010, and how that whole thing came together. And I don't think it's a coincidence that if you go back to those 4 years, where every single player came in because they wanted to be here, and they were the ones that they were giving it back. That we went to the finals 4 times, and we won 2 world championships, and then it changed. And in the summer of 2014, the whole thing got turned over. And sometimes the carnage that is left out there, you got to try to pick up the pieces, but at the same time fill in the holes to be competitive. Getting Lou Dang, getting McRoberts, and at that time, and trying to forge forward. But so what my thoughts were always to try to make the team better, and also at the same time to try to make sure that Dwayne, over the course of the 3, 4, 5 years that he had left in his career, that he was going to get his money, that he would get it, but not at the expense of paralyzing our ability to win, and which I think would have hurt him. So, if there's anything that I could have done better, as I said, I would have done it. But right now, there's no do-overs in this thing, and I wish him the best. It's been a sad week for both Chris and I. We love him dearly, and Gabby and the family, and just there's nothing you can say about it. I've always said that one of the only things you can count on in life that's permanent, it's one of my favorite sayings, is change. And when change raises its beautiful or ugly face, you got to deal with it, and you got to adapt and move on. We've been here before, and so I do. I wish him nothing but the best, and nothing but great health, and And I do think we sort of gathered ourselves a little bit at the end. And during this process, while we were negotiating with his agents, we were talking to all of these other players and the possibility that if something were to happen, that we could be able to move quickly. During that time, from July 1st to the 3rd, there were only 2 players. I think there were only 2 players that we felt that if we knew this was going to happen, that we sort of regretted that they went off the board. But that's the game that you play when it's free agency.
Pat, just going back to D-Wade for a second, how would you characterize your guys' relationship now, and have you guys been able to speak since he decided?
No, I haven't spoken to Dwayne yet. I've been crafting a very long email to him, and I'm going to send it when it's finished, but it's not finished. As far as I'm concerned, if I saw him right now, I really believe that it'd be a warm embrace. I don't have any of those feelings, any negative feelings for him at all. I know that he was caught in a quandary with his thinking and his thought processes at the time and what he felt was going on, and I know I was locked into mine, at that time, and so that's what happened. But I think, and I was so impressed, when he talked to you guys the day after, and I really believe he was sincere, truly sincere in the things that he said. At that particular time, he was raw, and I feel the same way about him. We all do, and I think everybody in the organization will feel that way about him forever.
Pat, just going back to Chris Bosh for a second, is it simply a matter of him being free of the blood clots, or is it a much more complicated issue than that with him returning to the court next season?
I can't speak medically about this thing. I can only speak from a basketball standpoint, and that he's been working out, and that he's going to probably continue to work out. And so from a basketball standpoint, is it complicated? It's only complicated based on the information that we would get back from our doctors if there's ever a moment of truth, when it comes to, yes or no. But from the standpoint, as of today, it's moving forward in a position of down that road of him playing, that he wants to play, and we're open to helping him. We're open to helping him get there. That's all I can say. It's a sensitive, complicated situation that I can't really speak to medically. From a basketball standpoint, I've been told, been sort of put on hold here, but we know what Chris is capable of, and the last 2 years, losing him after the All-Star break both years in a row, you just never know what you have or what you could have done, from that standpoint as a team. And so that's what kills me, is that we put together a good team right after LJ left, but we never had the opportunity to see it at its full. So I think we should just wait till August, September. I think we'll have a lot more information then.
Pat, you mentioned it's been a tough summer personnel-wise. What's your plan for getting this roster back up to your standards, and how quickly do you think that's possible?
Well, as I said, when I left, after the season, in the season-ending press conference, that Chris is an X factor here. So he's an X factor. We'll find out. That would make the whole thing a lot easier. I also said the priority at that time, not being the priority, not the priority. I said a priority was Hassan Whiteside, and there's no doubt that I was going to meet and talk with him early and get him signed. The fact that Hassan and Justice and Josh and Tyler are all like in that young group of guys. If you want to, we can debate it. Give me 4 guys their age in the league, and let's play a 4-on-4 game, and I think we'd have a pretty competitive 4, whether they're lottery picks or not, you know. And so we feel that we have a good base of young players, and so now the next step is to see what they can do and to augment this team, and then go from here. We are definitely going to be young. We're going to be playing at probably a different pace next year. What player emerges as sort of the guy, only time will tell. And I think that's a great part about, being in my position, is that once you give somebody the responsibility and you say, okay, hey, here it is, man. We push you through the door. I mean, you always talk about this in the locker room, or you think you can start, or you can play 30 minutes, or you want the ball in the last 3 minutes of the game, then here's your opportunity. And I think we have a couple of guys that are ready for that. I think Goran is going to have a different kind of season, a different kind of responsibility. We'll see what happens with him from that standpoint. Justice, Winslow, we've always sort of looked at him at it's time. I remember when James Worthy, came to the Lakers, and Jamal Wilkes was the incumbent. And then there came that time. There came that time when it was just a matter of time before James Worthy, was going to take his position. So, are we ready for Justice Winslow to start at the 3? I am. I'm not just throwing him out there. This guy has been thrown out there last year and played significant minutes and significant times. I trust him. And so you guys put too much emphasis on the things that he can't do versus what he can. And those things that he can't do, he's going to be able to do better with more minutes.
Pat, obviously the offer that you made to Dwayne would have tied up considerable cap space the next 2 years. Tyler's offer sheet would not have. That being said, what was your thinking in not offering Dwayne a third year but committing to Tyler at such a huge number that might reduce flexibility in years 3 and 4 at $19 and $20 million?
Well, if you're rolling over year to year and you're looking at the free agent class, then having your best and most important player at a time in his career, he's 35 years old, having him on a 1-and-1, on a 2-year deal, on a 1-and-1, so if he does opt out, then obviously the next year, if there's people out there in the market that you want that could come in under, and then you have that flexibility versus being locked into a 3-year deal where you don't. He could opt out, and if you miss on somebody, then because he's got bird rights, bird rights is the golden pass here for any veteran players. So you don't have to give players, 20, 20, 20, 20. You can give them 20, 8, 37, 25. What difference does it make? I mean, it's just, and we never talked about that, but I'm sure that's probably, if there was a player that Dwayne really likes it, heck yes. If there's a free agent that can come in here, that was the partnership that we had, not with him, but that's the partnership that the players had with the big 3. And there's a very cooperative, collaborative, what is it going to take to get players in to help us win? And so that's where, I kept reaching, and probably that's where I missed the point with him. And if I had a chance to really sit down and rethink my thoughts patiently at that time, maybe I could have made a difference in explaining the big picture versus the now picture.
With regard to Tyler, as part of that, why the commitment? Why was there comfort?
Well, he's on it. Well, it's a distorted contract, so he's on it low numbers the next 2 years. So, and then we'll have to deal with the with what's in year 3 and 4. So, and the reason why we matched is because, when you have a restricted free agent, or he wasn't a restricted free agent, but he was a player that, under the Gilbert Arena rules, makes it very difficult for you. Makes it easy for somebody like Brooklyn, who tried to get a bunch of young guys, balloon them up, and so to tell us that, we're going to poach one of your guys. Mickey said, you're not poaching any of my guys. And, Mickey made the decision. He loves Tyler. He's a young piece, part of our future. And so we'll deal with years 3 and 4, but years 1 and 2, we got them at a bargain. Yeah.
Have you envisioned a situation with Chris maybe playing with a restricted travel or maybe a limited workload?
I think all those things will come in to play, and there will be a discussion. There are many players in different sports that do play with that condition, and they're on and off programs on blood thinners and stuff. But I think when it comes down to a final protocol, or if it gets to a formula and how this has to be done, then that's what we'll deal with.
Pat, do you have any idea how it got here? I mean, it wasn't. I know Dwayne talked about money and respect levels and things of that nature, but in the end of the day, 42 here versus 47 in Illinois, it kind of works out tax-wise to roughly the same number. So it couldn't have been just money. It couldn't have been just one thing. Do you know what the ultimate deciding factor was?
You know, you get to a point, I think, as a man in your life where your thinking and thought process change. And they change on the circumstances. They change on the present moment. They change on the future. They change on what's going on, or you get locked into them. And so I keep talking about how he was thinking, I think, and how I was thinking at the time. And so, but you are what your thoughts are. And if his thoughts are where he was at that point where money wasn't the issue, then it was something else. And then, you know, that is where we both failed then. You know, this was not about money. This was about something else. And I more than he, because, you know, he's the asset. He's the star. He's the face of the franchise. I should have tried to done everything that I could have verbally in trying to change his mindset to mine, or a big picture, or a better picture, or one that I thought would help him, and also would give him two things: would help him end his career, and also get him, I think, financially the money that he needed and wanted.
Pat, obviously you made a huge commitment to Hassan Whiteside, a player with limited experience, to a degree limited productivity, played off the bench second half of the season. What made you go out and feel comfortable enough to give pretty close to maximum money going forward to a player like that? And was there ever a point, just the magnitude of the deal, when you had to sit back a little bit and realize the sort of commitment, such a long term, to a player who is a relative neophyte in this league?
Different world we're in the NBA. Ira, you've been covering it for 29 years. We've only been here 28. How can you cover it for 29? Oh, I got you. Okay. So you've seen the changes over the years. So all of us have been around all these years, have seen how the things have changed. I mean, when I was coaching the Lakers, I remember Jerry West calling me on the phone in my first year and saying, we just signed Mitch Kupchak. Now, he was the first free agent to ever sign a free agent contract. He signed for like $1,800,000, you know, $600,000 a year for 3 years. And so I said, what do we have to give up for him? He said, nothing. He's a free agent, you know. And so Mitch Kupchak came to the Lakers, and at $600,000, he's making, I think, twice the money of Kareem and twice the money of Magic, and, you know, all these players. And so, you know, we've seen this whole thing change over the years dramatically. And this summer there was an explosion, an absolute explosion of dollars, and the amount of money that came into the system because of the television contract. And the cap going from $70 to $94 million. That's an added $24 million. I've never seen more teams with more maximum room than I've seen this year. So there were a lot of opportunities for players to really capitalize. I don't look at that with Hassan. What I look at with Hassan is that we were very fortunate to get him. But we did track him, and, you know, he was on our radar, and we ended up getting him here. And we saw enough in the last 2 years to say that this is a very unique talent, very unique player. And at the dollars that he's going to be getting over the 4 years, we felt that was worth the investment. You've all seen him play, and he can absolutely dominate a game and on on the defensive end, blocking shots, rebounding, lobs, dunks, all those things. And but I wouldn't judge him and warn him. Don't warn him, please. And you shouldn't do this just because the guy got a max contract. Don't warn him that you better play well, or we're going to tell everybody you're not deserving of the money. I mean, if you take a look at some of the contracts that went out the first 2 days, on December the 15th, Andy and I are going to be getting a lot of calls from teams about how to get rid of those deals. And so we believe he's an essential part of this team, anchors our defense, will improve offensively, and gain more confidence. So we agreed, as an organization that he was a player that we're willing to make that investment in. I don't think he's a neophyte. Neophytes don't, get 20 rebounds and 20 points and block 12 shots. He is a little bit young and raw to a leadership role and a responsible every single night role. You got to produce these numbers. That's what our obligation is as a franchise, as coaches, to make sure he's productive. But the money doesn't have anything to do with it.